glad to be here. And this is a very good opportunity because once you get me started on certification, I might not stop. So I think, Ronald, we are starting, or are we waiting for people to show?
Let's start, Barbara.
Okay. All right. So I'll just jump right in. Please feel free to, if you have any questions, not wait till the end, just put them in the chat box and I'll be taking a peep while I speak so that I don't leave anyone behind. So certification, I'll start by defining, I guess, what it is, because a lot of people know that they need to be certified or have heard they need to be certified, but they don't understand what it is and what the process is. So certification, I never know where to look when I'm doing these things. I don't have to look at the screen. I don't see people's faces, but certification is basically a process where a third party will come into, let's say, your business and do a kind of audit and give assurance that what you're doing is in line and conforms with the standard of what or that is out there. So if you're in a service, there's going to be a standard for what you're doing. If you're producing a product, there's going to be a standard. So they need an independent party to come in and do an audit or do a test of your product and say, yes, this conforms to whatever guideline is in the standard. And I'm going to keep saying standard here, but that's basically a document that is developed by consensus of experts in that field. So if you're in, say, agribusiness and you're producing, I see someone producing honey, there's going to be a standard for honey. So experts in that field came together, sat and said, for the production of honey, for it to be a safe product, these are the things that need to be in place, whether it's a system guideline or it's a product characteristic. So when I say product characteristic, we're going to be referring to things like things that are tested in the lab. So it's texture, it's color, it's safety. Things you might see or might not see and need to take to a lab for tests. So that's all encompassed in a standard. Standards can be set. Like I said, it's a meeting of minds and experts and agreeing on it. So it can be at a national level, at regional level, or an international level. So when you hear international standards, national standards, every country almost that I would know of has a national standard. So Uganda has national standards. I won't say standard because there are very many standards. So there'll be a standard for honey, a standard for cement, a standard for steel, a standard for services, if you're in services, the particular service that you're in. So each country has their own national standard. And some regions, let's say the East African community, because they want to improve trade amongst themselves, they will go a step further and harmonize their standards into a regional standard. So you will have the East African standard. So some of you may have realized that when we harmonized our standards, when you have a Q mark, if you're in agribusiness and you're producing something, if you have a Q mark from UNBS, you're able to easily move your product and put it on a shelf in, say, Rwanda or Kenya. Now, of course, you know, there are things that happen at the border. Maybe they do a test and it can't pass. So certification doesn't necessarily mean you can export anyhow, because when you reach like the borderline, they have a right to take a sample of whatever product you have and do more tests on it. So if it doesn't pass, they can hold your goods. So some people will be like, why we're certified, but you're not letting our goods pass? Well, because they did a random sampling and maybe it just didn't pass certain parameters. So those are national and regional standards. Even the EU has regional standards. As you know, it's an EU bloc. You have the North America bloc, which has the US, Canada, Mexico, I think. So all those countries try to improve trade and have a single recognized standard for whatever they're trying to trade in. Then we'll have the international standards, which a lot of people talk about. These are standards again. So just imagine these different countries with their national standards have now come together and are now trying to develop standards or guidelines that can be across their different countries. Now, this is a more complex arrangement because, as you realize, different countries have different needs or different cultures, different ecosystems. So trying to find a balance where every country is happy is quite a complex thing. So ISO, which a lot of people hear about, is one of the international standards out there. So a standard can be a mandatory requirement to conform to. And I say conform, I mean you have to satisfy the requirements in the standard. So it can be a mandatory standard, which most national standards are mandatory standards. International standards are, because of the complexity of them, are more of guidelines and voluntary standards. So it's up to the buyer, let's say you're exporting, it's up to whoever is buying to say, okay, I would like you to conform to this particular international standard. And you can choose not to, and you say, I don't want to, so I'm not going to trade with you. That's a choice. But give an example of a national standard, like UNBS has national standards for almost most of the products that we produce in Uganda. It has for cement, like I gave examples, honey, beeswax. I'm trying to look through everybody here and what you do. I see paint, I see aluminum fabrications. There's all the standards. If you go on their website and you go to their web store and you type in any product that you have or that you produce, you will see that there's a standard for you to have, and it will tell you if it's mandatory. Most of the mandatory standards in Uganda are related to products or services that directly impact the health and safety of a human being. So that will be mainly food. So if you're in the food industry, chances are you absolutely have a mandatory standard out there that you need to be conforming to. And I know maybe I think it was maybe 4 years ago when UNBS passed the regulation that you can't supply to supermarkets unless you're certified against the standard that is relevant to your product. And this took out some people from the marketplace. And so while you can probably still trade, because if you're a small business and say you're selling to a kaduka next to you, or you're selling to your friends, the limits of the law, because of resources, of course, they're not going to maybe find you. And I'm not saying go out and trade like that, but if you want to grow, if your aim is to eventually be on the supermarket shelf, or the Carrefours and the Capital Shoppers and ShopRite, and reach more people, then you're going to have to align yourself with that regulation and be certified. Again, please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat room. I keep peeping there, so I don't want to lose anyone. So that is certification and standards. I just wanted you to get the understanding of the two terms. So you have a standard for anything you do, a service, a product, and then you have certification, which is a third party coming in, an independent party, so not the producer, not the buyer, a third party coming in and saying, we have looked at your system, we have looked at what you do, we have tested it, if that's applicable, and you conform to that relevant standard. So I want to now talk about the process of certification. I will take an example of, I'll start with actually the national certification of UNBS. The process is quite simple to be certified. It's basically you go onto their website, you put in an application, and you start a profile. Well, you log in, so you sign in, you create an account, you make an application. It will ask for a couple of details, basics on your business. You have to have a TIN number to apply. And then when they have that information, you put in your product information, brand, a few quality documents, and then they give you an audit date. Now, an audit date is basically them coming to your facility and doing the inspection, like I described, looking through your systems, looking through your documents. Think of it as how you'd audit your financials. You'd need an accountant to come in and you give them the receipts, your expense books and what, and they start looking at the proof of expense. So it's the same thing with an auditor coming in to audit your system or your product. They're going to come in, look at your facility. Do you actually produce here? Look at your equipment. And then after that audit, they're going to, and an audit is always done. Again, I say certification is done against a specific standard. Someone just can't come in and certify you. Even you would have to have a copy of the standard. So that's one of the requirements actually, is as a business, you have to have a copy of the standards relevant to what you're doing. Because if it's an agreed based practice, then you should also have it and know what is expected of you. Even if you're not looking to certify, I encourage you to have that standard with you for reference and growth. So back to the audit, the auditor will come, look at your system, and then he will write an audit report. An audit report will have details of the sections that you conform to, sections you don't conform to. And then you'll have time to make adjustments to that conformity. So if they say, we checked your equipment and maybe there was no cleaning schedule, please, do that. So you'll have a period of time where you do that, get back to the auditor, tell them I have closed all the gaps that you need. Let's move on. And then they'll give you the certificate if you pass. What you need to know if you're in the agribusiness, if you're doing a product, the chances are there are 3 standards that you have to comply to. The product standard, a hygiene standard, which is the good manufacturing practice standard for food, or if you're not producing food, then there's a good manufacturing practice for non-food items, and then your labeling standard. So basically the product standard will capture things about the product itself. Will capture things about the product, its characteristics, its parameters that are tested in the lab. So that's when you get things like aflatoxin, moisture content, ash, heavy metal. And during an audit, they'll pick a sample of your product and they'll take it for testing. Lab testing is done whether you're in food or cosmetics. There are certain parameters that need to be satisfied to prove that your product is safe. So they will do that. So that's the product standard, which has those, and then it will reference the labeling standard. So if you're packing whatever product, there are requirements on how you label. There are claims that you can make on the product. So you can't just put on a product and producing, say, avocado seed beverage. There's so many beverages out there, but legally you can't put on a product that it cures cancer. Maybe you've done some research and it helps, but once you make that claim on a product that it either cures something or it's good for something or it's even organic, they're going to ask for proof. And this is what I've seen a lot is because us as Ugandans, we know that our products are organic, but there is, again, proof that you have to provide to show that it's organic. Let me just divert a bit and talk about organic certification just for a little bit, and why there's a lot of control on when you label it. Because as people in agribusiness, people in farming, I think I saw someone who was in farming. When you say organic, yes, there's requirements on how the levels of pesticide and level of fertilizer and the level of chemicals that you're using. There's even a control on the type. You might conform to that naturally because maybe you're growing it up country and everything is natural. But then when it moves from your location to, say, the market, it is put on a truck with someone who is not conforming to this. So someone who is maybe using a different pesticide that's not approved. There's going to be a transfer of residue. So what is in the organic standard is you have to control your organic produce. There has to be a clear separation, and you have to prove that this separation exists of what you produced organically to when it reached the person you're selling. So there was no confusion during storage that you put it next to a certain jerry can which had oil, or you put it together with a truck of non-organic material. And because what it means is that there was a possibility that there was a transfer of what is not acceptable in organic standards. So that's why they're very strict with that claim organic. So most people will say natural, they won't use the word organic, it's natural and free from preservatives. So yeah, let me, that I just got diverted a bit on that organic certification, but let me go back to the process. So yes, the certification process. So that was basically it. You know, you put an application, you get audited, they tell you what doesn't conform, you fix the non-conformities, they come back and they give you a certificate. So if you've passed the lab test and you've passed the audit, then there wouldn't be anything else to stop you from getting the certificate. A UNBS certificate, I think, lasts a year. I'm sure it lasts a year, so it gets renewed every year. I know they started a system where if you have an international certification, say like ISO 22000, which is for food, they are trying to move the Q mark to last a little longer than a year, because I think the costs of renewing the certificate might be a little bad, might be a burden for many. But right now it has to be renewed every year. So that means they would audit you every year, and in that year is what they call a surveillance audit. So UNBS can randomly go into a supermarket or find a product anywhere, pick it up, take it for testing. If it doesn't pass certain parameters, then they'll look for you, because part of actually the labeling requirements is you have to have your address on it. So yeah, that means they have that already so that they can find you in case there's a problem with the product. In case a customer has an issue, they can always find you or even give you good feedback. So that address is important. What else can I say about the, maybe I say a little about, because I had said the three standards that you would need. The labeling standard, we've talked about it, talked about the product standard, and then there's the good manufacturing standard. This one is it's very encompassing, but I'll just try to give you an idea of what's in it. It will capture areas in your business. And this is why I encourage people, even if you're not looking to immediately get certified, to get that standard, because it looks at your premises. Do you have a cleaning schedule? How do you control pests and contamination? How do you maintain your equipment? Is your staff trained on what it needs to do? Do you have procedures that outline your process? And the reason for documenting your procedure is, just imagine a situation where you're a small business, maybe you've been doing things yourself, and there's steps to produce what you're producing. Maybe the first step is you peel, or let's say you're making, chili sauce or tomato sauce, and you have peeling of tomatoes, you have blanching of the tomatoes, you have blending, maybe you're mixing something at a certain quantity. There are different steps. So if you bring someone in, it's easier if you've already outlined the steps. So maybe you tell them, okay, first cut and then do this, and then you go, and they forget. It's there. It's usually, if you enter a facility, you will see little signs on the wall that have the procedure, so that in case somebody's a bit confused, maybe in what comes next, it's easily accessible, like you can see. So this also helps you streamline your processes and have a little more control. And I will go a bit more in detail when we're talking about the benefits of conforming to standards. So that is certification at a national level. UNBS also certifies services. So again, just log onto the UNBS website, go to their web store. You will see standards catalog, type in whatever you want to type in and see if they have a standard for it. How they develop the standards is, if there's high demand for a standard, it has to come from the consumers, from the businesses that we are producing this, and we need a standard. And so what happens is UNBS says, okay, we have producers, they need a standard, let's sit down, let's look for best practice and guidelines for them for this standard. So that's national certification. Now, when we look at international certification, I'm going to give examples of ISO standards. ISO has over 24,000 standards. So you can imagine at a national level, like I said, if you have a standard for every product, we're looking at over 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 standards on the UNBS website. So imagine at a national level, I mean, an international level, we're looking at over 24,000 standards. So when someone says, are you certified? Do you have international certification? It's a question of to what? Like, what do you want to be certified against? Because certification has to be aligned to a specific standard. The major ones, although you have, like in ISO, while they have over 24,000, there are very popular ones. There's the, for food, they have the ISO 22,000. That's the food and safety. Then they have the environment one, which is 14,001. They have the quality management system, which is 9,001. They have one on energy that is 50,001. They have one on information security. So service people, I see people here in service. I've seen most of them lean towards the 9,001, the quality management system. And then people in the agribusiness lean more towards the 22,000 food safety, of course, because it's fast. And it's not unusual to find a business with 6, 7 certificates. So if you're in food, you'll have the food safety certificate. You'll have a certificate to show your management of the environment. You'll have a certificate to show your operational and health and safety management, which is the OHS. You can have another one which shows you're organically certified. You can have as many certificates as you think are relevant to your business. And we'll go over the relevance of different standards later on. So again, the certification at an international level is more or less the same as it is here. Application, audit, identification of non-conformities, and you closing those non-conformities and then giving you the certificate. The only thing is the ISO, they have like maybe 2 stages. They have the stage 1 audit and stage 2 audit. And I don't want to make it very technical, but it's almost the same thing. Stage 1, they come in and look at your documentation. They look at, understand your key processes and determine your readiness for stage 2. Stage 2, they come in and now look at your implementation. It's like they just split it into, they split the audit into, but it's more or less the same principle. Application, someone comes in, looks at your documents, your systems, everything. So it's like they're looking at the standard and they're looking at what you do, whether it's physically or through what you have documented. So this is where documentation comes in place. As an auditor, I can't prove that you do what you do if I don't know what you do. So the document tells you what you're supposed to do. The record tells you that you've done it. So if your document says you're supposed to, maybe in your process, you say you're supposed to clean a certain area after every production run, there needs to be some kind of record that this is actually what you do. So some people just have a simple template and it has the date, it has maybe a checkbox and a signature, right? So whoever is responsible for doing that particular activity will just, come, write the date, check that it's done, and sign. That's a record. And then maybe you'll have at the end someone who verifies that these actions have been done, maybe the supervisor. That is a record for cleaning. There's nothing very complex about it. And when you're creating documents and records, don't try to get something someone has done, because now you're trying to fit your process into someone else's template. It's best to write based on what you're doing now and then see what works and what doesn't and edit it, because it's easier to train your staff if they're already doing some of the activities as opposed to someone coming in. So if you call me to your business and you say, oh, I need to set up documentation and record templates, I'm not coming in with templates that are pre-built. I'm coming in understanding what you're already doing. We write it out and look at what it looks like as a template. Look at what is your cleaning schedule now. Once you have that, then you will see, oh, maybe I need to clean more. Maybe I'm in a dusty area and I need to increase the number of times that I'm cleaning, or maybe I don't need to clean a certain area. I need to focus on the windows or on the floor. So it's important to tailor your documents to your business as opposed to trying to fit your business into a pre-existing template. So yeah, back to the process of international certification. Again, it's the same as national. So if you have any questions, I see any link where you can find out which product needs certification and what standards to look for. If it depends on whether you're looking for, like I said, national, let's break it down now into national, international certification. But I'm going to go over, towards the end of it, I am going to go over some suggestions on how to identify which standard you need or certification. Now let's talk about the standards and how these are good for your business, or if they're even good for your business. Okay, we have separated the two aspects. You can conform to a standard, but not necessarily be certified. And I think hopefully we now understand what that means, because if you have a standard as a document, right, and you've looked at the guidelines, it says you need this, 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 and you've done them, but you haven't got a third party to come in and verify it. So you're not certified, but maybe you as a business, you're conforming. And what's happening a lot is when you look at people who do, say, who are into the fair trade arena and organic and some others who want that social accountability certification. You hear a lot of people saying farm to plate, they're working with farmers, they are paying people premium. So there are standards to prove that you're doing all that. But there's been a challenge because of the cost of certification. Certification, especially at an international level, is not cheap, because if it's an international certification, you're looking at maybe, depending on the complexity of your business, the size, the number of employees, the number of shifts. If you have two locations, they both need to be audited. You're paying for an auditor to come in. You're paying for his fare to come into the country. If they don't have local presence, you pay for his flight, you pay for his accommodation, you pay for the days that he has to audit. So you're looking at a minimum of $5,000 to get audited. It can even go to 10, it can even go to 15,000. So it's quite expensive. But the thing with the international certifications, they last 3 years. So you do it now, they'll come back after 3 years for you to renew. So it's good to understand that even if you're not yet at that point, you can't afford maybe yet to be certified, you're still thinking about it, but you know there's a standard, whether it's especially if it's a mandatory standard. Get the standard and let it help you build your business while you're looking and deciding on if you want to be certified. Of course, if it's a mandatory certification, it's just you get it. But if it's a voluntary certification, then still get it if it's something you're interested in, look at it. And usually most of the standards, since I said again before, that they're based on experts who come together in that field and say, this is best practice in whatever you're doing. So it will help you also have a guideline for continuous improvement. I don't know if any of you have heard of that term, continuous improvement in business, whether you're producing or in service. You're constantly looking for ways to be more efficient, to make your product better. And depending on your methodology, there's multiple methodologies for continuous improvement. You've heard of Six Sigma, lean manufacturing, where you're reducing waste or reducing defects. Whichever one you're using, they all are based on the principle of having some level of control and understanding your processes in detail. And you can't control processes that maybe don't exist, right? So if you're producing, I'm going to keep referring to agribusiness because they're ones that have a lot of complexity going on when they're producing something. If you're producing, say, shea butter, right? And you don't have a process that's repeatable that says, okay, before I produce, I'm going to have criteria for picking my raw material. I'm not going to just go to the market and pick any shea nut and use it in my process. I want a nut that looks like this, that doesn't have these defects, that is this color, that has this smell. So it's up to you to set that criteria for your raw material. And this is what a standard helps you do. It highlights these areas that need to be controlled. Your raw material. It it points you towards how you should maintain your storage. So if you pick your nuts, where are you storing them? Are you able to have a space that can protect them from infestation, from whatever, mold and what? If not, what are you going to do? So if I've just worked with cottage industry, so people producing in their garages. And please remember that at a national level, if you want certification, even if you're in a garage, don't think you can't be certified, right? It's a matter of understanding your gap between what you're doing and what the standard requires. And it's not, you must have a space of X amount. You must have this. If you have a small space, it's up to you to know how do you set up your operations where there's no cross-contamination. If I bring raw materials and I'm producing in this space, am I able to now have a finished product in another space without that contamination, without raw material contaminating final product? Remember, if you've taken raw material through certain processes as a final consumer good, you don't want now raw material mixing in the final product because you don't know what's on this. It could still be some remnants of mold or dust or stones. So the whole idea is avoid contamination on the different levels. So you decide, is your space enough? Your production could be so simple that a one room is enough. Or it could be complex where you're like, no, I have so many different stages of production, I need maybe an extra room. But you won't know this until you assess your business. So I've seen a lot of people say, I can't get certified because I need to first build, I need first a 3-bedroom house, or I need to get this machine. I'm like, it's okay if you've made the assessment, then that's fine. But don't make investments before you understand the bare minimum of what is required, until you've done a full assessment and said, okay, for me to comply with this particular line in the standard, I need maybe food grade material. I need food grade machines. I need, for me to have a good flow to avoid contamination, I need maybe a room and a half or a room and a store. For me to be able to have my staff come in, have a place to change, because part of it is hygiene of people handling your product. So do they need a changing room? Do they need a facility to use for sanitation? Then you say, okay, these are the different things I need based on the standard. Then you make a plan. So don't make a plan when you don't understand what is required, because you might go into expenses that are not required and everything will overwhelm you. So get someone in. UNBS has a department for small enterprises. The gentleman that leads this is called Ronald Ahan Simply. You can call him and ask him that you need what they call a pre-assessment, or you can call the chamber. We also help our members with pre-assessments. And that means someone is going to come in. They're not looking to certify you, but they're going to help you understand, because sometimes the requirements of the standard can be a bit technical for some people. And so they need someone to help interpret what that means. If the standard says you need this, what does that mean for you in your operation? So you do what they call a pre-assessment or a pre-audit. You're not attached to any certification. It's not that there's a pass or fail, but it helps to do that gap analysis. Where am I now? What does the standard require? And how do I create a journey to start closing those gaps? It might take you a month. Maybe you're not far off. Maybe your gap is like this big. Sometimes the gap is so big, it might take you a year and a half. But at least you know what needs to be done and you can plan your resources, because I know resources are very limited. So it's very important to be able to plan ahead and understand how much money do you need to cover this. If it's equipment I need, where am I going to get the money? So having, again, trying to conform to standards and best practice will help you plan better. And in terms of internal operations, again, it's going to help you one of the things which may not be immediate, but in the long run, is it helps you reduce waste. And I'll give you an example of sections in the standard that look at how you store your raw materials. Some people will buy a lot of stuff and then store it, and then all of a sudden the raw material is spoiled, or they have put it in a way where you bought a jerry can or maybe a basket of something that expires. You've placed it in your room. Then maybe weeks, maybe a month later, you bought something else. You've placed it in the same room, but you haven't been recording what came in first and what came in last. So there's what they call the FIFO, fast in, fast out. I think some of you may have heard of it. So standards help you do that batching, right? You need to know what came in first, and do I need to use it first before I use something that came in just the other day. Then what else? Again, if you're doing production and you have control of your process, it will help you in understanding which process might not be as efficient as you think it is. And are you wasting material? So you're going to have a defined process of my tomatoes come in, they are peeled, they are mushed, they are sorted. You're going to see how much losses you're making. Say, for example, you've bought a whole bunch of tomatoes, and now the first step is sort, right? You're sorting through tomatoes, and then because you have measured them before, and you're measuring them after sorting, you realize you've lost maybe 10% of your raw material. And then it starts getting you thinking, am I getting from the right supplier, right? Are these tomatoes okay? Maybe I need to look at other suppliers so that I'm not wasting this money. I've lost a lot in sorting. When you do the different things, let's say you're, I'm trying to think of really simple examples in production. Let's say one of your processes is transforming the nut into butter, and you've weighed it, and then, okay, actually let's look at waste management. In shea butter, there's a lot of waste that is generated from the production. If you're doing it from seed, you have the husks, you have what? When you have a raw material, it starts making you think, hey, but what can I do with this waste material? Because the standard requires you to dispose of it properly. So you start thinking, but is this waste that I can use? Like, where am I going to throw it? Maybe I can sell it to someone else. These little things that the standard gets you thinking, it might not be something directly in the standard, but it's something that will get you thinking of different opportunities or different efficiencies within your system. What else does the standard do? It helps, let's talk about COVID for a minute. And part of, especially a system standard is risk management. So you have to continuously be monitoring your process, your supply chain. Do you have only one supplier? Is that really sustainable? Do you need to look for more suppliers to approve? And you're not just going into the market and picking material, because then that's not having suppliers. Having approved suppliers is building the relationship both between your supplier and your customer, and having very strong communication systems. So you're able to quickly communicate to your supplier that this is what I need, and you know their capacities, you know how they produce whatever your raw material is. And I remember I was talking to Ron, and I was highlighting this issue where you're trying to export, and this is something we have noticed when trying to link businesses to importers, is over-promising, right? So you have no idea on the capacity, maybe you haven't really analyzed your capacity. How much can you actually produce, and in what timeline? You know that if someone wants, let's say there's an order for tomato ketchup, right, or tomato sauce, which you're producing, you say, yes, I'm going to get it. But you don't know the capacity of your approved suppliers. You just know there are many tomatoes in the market. You're like, hey, I can't fail to get tomatoes. But when this order comes in, all of a sudden, maybe the tomatoes which are in the market don't fit your criteria. Because remember, in our process, we have raw material criteria. You need a tomato that looks like this, that is this firmness. because eventually your raw material is going to impact your final product. So maybe if you realize as you run your process that getting tomatoes from this area changes the taste of your final product, or changes the texture, or changes the color. So you start zeroing in on how can I have a consistent product for my customer every single time? And that's what a standard does. You don't want your customer to one day go in, your tomato is a deep red, your tomato sauce is a deep red, the texture is flowy, it is maybe a bit salty, and they fall in love with that particular attribute, those particular attributes. And then the next time you get your product, it is maybe a light pink, and it's not as flowy, and maybe it's a bit spicy. You can't keep surprising your customer. I mean, you need your customer to know that I am going to consistently give you this product that you love every single time, or maybe better. But even when you're doing it better, that's why sometimes on the label you see new and improved. It means they've changed their formula, and that's okay. Systems are not there to lock you into something, but they're to help you improve in a systematic manner. So maybe if you've improved your formula, communicate it to the customer. Don't let them just be surprised. All of a sudden, I'm taking dark red tomato ketchup, the next minute it's pink. And for some people, they don't realize the impact this has on customers. Some people are very discerning in what they're taking. If I don't see consistency in your product, I might say, these people are not serious, and I move on. So standards help you provide that consistency to your customer and have good communication tools in place to be able to communicate any changes and get feedback from the customer and feed it back into your system. Another thing, so that is the benefit of having standards, regardless of whether you want to certify or not. Now let's look at the benefits of certification. When you certify, it means you're just assuring your buyer or your customer that you have in place systems, like I said, that will deliver a consistent product or service every time. So if you don't have a system that's set, how are you assuring me that what I get from you today is going to be what I get from you tomorrow? If you don't have a system, your supply chain is not locked in place, you don't have specific ways of doing things. I'm going to assume you're just doing things as they come. So certification gives assurance to your buyer that this is something I'm going to give you consistently because systems are in place. And when you're selling to a supermarket, let's say, for example, here in Uganda, it's mandatory for you to have certification to enter a supermarket. So getting certification opens you up to new markets that have that mandatory requirement. And even in other countries with national standards, most of them will have a requirement that if you're going to put your product on any shelf to reach more people than your neighbor, then you have to be certified. And even supermarkets are taking it on themselves because they are literally carrying the risk. If anything happens to a customer because of your product, they are involved in that risk because they're the ones, it's where the customer got it. So they also want to know that for you who is bringing your product, you are assuring them that my product is safe. I'm not just telling you to tell you. I've had someone independent come in, check it out, test it. They survey it every year. The product is safe. Of course, certification doesn't remove risk that something might happen, but it at least tells me you're doing everything possible to reduce that risk. And you're going to continue every year to try and make it more efficient and move the risk for defects from 80% to 10% to 60% to 50%, whichever time it takes, at least I have that assurance. And there are certain attributes of your product that can't be captured verbally. So let us say you want your customer to know that maybe your product is organic, right? Or you have fair trade practices, which means maybe you pay your farmers a premium, and that when I buy your product in the supermarket, you're not there to tell me the stories. Testing your tomato sauce and testing a conventional tomato sauce, I'm not going to know which is organic. I'm not going to know that for you, you put effort in making sure that the farmers have certain things. So a logo on your product actually says, this is the story of my attributes. So if it's an organic product, the logo is going to tell me as a consumer that, oh, these are the things that they did to achieve this. If there's a fair trade logo, it's going to say these are the practices that they have in place to produce the product. If your business is very big on an environment, then you're going to have maybe that environment certificate that says we are very keen on managing our environmental impact. Then you have a logo. So it tells you a story for you when you're not there. So yes, so that is certification. Another thing certification can do is open your door to niche markets, which may offer a premium price. So like I said, if someone is looking for organic, maybe they are willing to pay more for that, or they're willing to pay more for someone who has good environmental impact practices. So having that certificate could, I'm saying it's an automatic that you're going to get a better price. But if everyone is doing mandatory and you say we're going above and beyond your basic safety, yes, all our products are safe, we all have that safety certification, but look what we're doing. We also have fair trade practices. We also have, we're very keen on the environment. We're very keen on labor laws, the different certificates that you find relevant to that market. You put them there and maybe you can get that niche market that values that practice that you're doing. So yeah, I think we covered that. Now, let's go to the last bit of the presentation, and which is the one that someone mentioned earlier about what standard do I need, what certificate do I need. So like I said, certification is expensive. Everybody knows this. The certification itself is expensive. Some of the things that you need to put in place might cost you. So maybe you need more people, and you need to do trainings every year, maybe you need new equipment, all these costs. So it's very important to understand which certificate and which standard has the biggest impact on your bottom line, right? Or on the value or your brand. So let's look at some of the suggestions on how you can determine which one it is. First is whatever you're producing, whether you're doing a product or a service, understand the requirements of that industry, understand the basic requirements of that product. Or because most of even if you're in the service industry, there's always associations. You're able to go into their websites and look at the trend in that industry. So if you're in production of agribusiness, you know the biggest thing in agribusiness is food safety, right? That is the biggest thing. Even beyond, maybe organic is good, but first is your product safe. So you look at the different certificates that prove that you have a safe product. Is it a national, if you're dealing nationally, if you're in a national supermarket, that's going to be the UNBS certificate. It's going to say this product is safe, and it's going to put you on the market, mandatory certificate. If you want to trade in the EU, you're going to look at the certificates that speak to safety. So not all certificates are recognized in different countries. Remember when I said each country, first of all, has its national standards. But the beauty of this is national standards all come from the same basic principles, having a safe product. So if you have, let us say, got the UNBS certificate, there are principles that you embedded in your processes that can be built on to reach maybe another country, maybe Europe's standard. But the problem is if you're not starting from anything, it's like going from 0 to 60. You need to be able to have a certain level of safety. So UNBS certificate, let's say, it has covered your safety requirements. You want to export to the EU. So you're going to go on to do some market research. It all comes back to market research. You're going to do what are people looking, what do consumers want beyond safety? Is organic something they really want? Is that the trend? And you don't want quick trends because consumers, 1 minute they really want to be organic, the next minute they're heavy on the environment, the next minute they're heavy on labor rights, the next. So understand which provides a stable trend for you to invest in, because you can't get all the certificates unless, I mean, you can if you have the resources, but if you want to zero in, look at what maybe provides that premium. So what is your strategy? Is it to serve a niche market? Because eventually you're going to do, after all this, you're going to do a cost benefit analysis. So you say, maybe you're zeroed in and say, I want to export to Europe. And doing my market research, there's a big demand by consumers, because these requirements are really demands from the consumers. There's a big demand for fair trade practices in my particular sector. Because I know, let us say cotton, there was a time it was cotton and tea. They were very big on child labor, and so having a certificate that shows that you've aligned yourself to removing or avoiding that child labor arrangement specific to your standard. This might not be relevant to say someone doing tomato sauce. I mean, it's not been an issue. So you're like, okay, I don't need that. Maybe I need organic, because people who want tomato sauce are very keen on, pesticides in the tomato. So it comes down to market research. You need to understand your industry the same way that you do market research for the basic, your basic market research for customers, the 4 Ps. Also look at what are the requirements of that industry in terms of certification. So I can't say the question of what certificate do I need or what standard. We would need to, you sit with your team or, come to the chamber and let us help you. Look at your particular product or standard, and we see the trend in that and the requirements. So we'll go from what are the mandatory requirements of your product or service. Are there any additional certificates that would give you that competitive advantage, or that would open you up to a niche market? Is it worth it? Because now, once you've identified the standards, you go back and say, let me look briefly at what this standard entails, and let me see where I am. Again, always do that gap analysis. Then you cost it. What is the cost of changing my system in case I need to change it? What is the cost of complying? What are the costs of maintaining the certificate? And then you do that cost benefit analysis to determine if you want to do it. So I would say that would be the first step. And so I'll give you an example on, if you want to say supply, let's say Walmart, right? And Walmart has said, this is our brand. Yes, maybe you have a food safety standard, but Walmart has said, our brand is in responsible sourcing. Again, maybe I'm going to use fair trade as an example again. And Walmart actually has its own standards. So I forgot to mention, standards can be set by a private entity. Walmart can say, these are our standards. You have your mandatory standards, yes, but for you to sit on our shelf, you have to be aligned to our brand. So we're not going to say we're very keen on labor laws and responsible sourcing, but then they bring in a product that doesn't align to that brand, because if anything happens and the consumer says, I saw this product and maybe I checked their website and there's so many things going on about them and labor laws, Walmart's going to suffer because they have brought in a product that's not aligned to their brand. So also look at what your buyer wants sometimes. Sometimes it's worth it to get a certificate for one buyer. Let's say it's a big buyer. Maybe Walmart says, we'll buy from you, sign this agreement, just get the certificate. Now that's up to you as a business to decide, is this something I'm willing to invest in? Are we going to sign an agreement? And so I get my returns if I go through this whole process. And try to remember that certification is not, conforming to standards might not be, usually it is not an overnight thing. You're going to have to put in different things based on your resources over a period of time. International certification requires you to plan. If you've heard of the Plan, Do, Check Act, you plan and you say, these are the things I'm going to do to conform to the assessment, but you also have to show that these things work. So you need a period where you're actually running your control and prove that this control actually satisfied whatever requirement you're trying to do. So you can't wake up and say, I mean, maybe you can, but you can't, it's not good practice to wake up and say, I want to be certified tomorrow, because you don't have any records, first of all. So what am I going to audit you? You have no records. So try to have something in place where when somebody comes to audit, they're able to see some records, they're able to see if what you're doing works for the system. So yes, going back to that question, please try to do a lot of market research based on the industry. Like I said, we're having over 24,000 international certifications, and that's just from one organization, ISO. We have people who are doing fair trade, people who are doing social accountability, people who are doing labor rights. All these might apply. If you're in oil and gas and you're trying to supply the tallow, say for example. Yes, I remember there was an issue with let's say food suppliers, and they say, look, we need to have somebody who can offer us consistency. We don't want to buy food from different people all the time because it's expensive for them and it's not aligned to their certificate. If they have a certificate on environmental management, they might require their suppliers to at least have a level of that embedded in their operations, because then your brands are aligned and they're not going to be caught up in risk because one of their suppliers was somewhere destroying the environment on their own, because somehow it ties back to them. So yeah, let me see now. I think I have spoken a lot, but let me try to see if there are any questions that that I may have. I'm sorry, I kind of because of certifications, lack of knowledge. Here there's a question of, despite an increasing demand for organic products in Uganda. Oh, sorry, was that the first question? I haven't missed questions on. Yes, I think that was the first question. Oh, my contacts, yes, I will put, I think Ronald will share my contacts or put them, I'm going to put my contacts in the chat box.
Yes, but we can just put them in there and then we can, I'll also try to kind of repost them. There are a couple of questions which have come through. I don't know whether you have managed to capture all of them.
If you can, I'm trying to go through them now. Unfortunately, I got caught up in talking and I forgot. So I'm trying to go. Increase in demand of organic products in Uganda. Our farmers are failing to export in bulk because of certification constraints. Is it because of lack of knowledge or because of the process? I think, again, I may have touched on organic again earlier in the presentation, where I said we may know we're organic in our farming practice. So if you're producing on your farm, you're producing maybe organic, I don't know what your farmers do, but let's say it's coffee. So you're not using pesticides. If you're using pesticides, they're in a controlled amount based on the limits of the standard. You're doing everything along the standard. But your neighbor who is producing, maybe maize, whatever, is not looking to be organic, but they're right next to you. There is what they call in one of the standards that transfer. So there is a risk that whatever, when he sprays his farm, it comes into your farm. These are the nitty-gritties that we don't realize when we say our products are organic. But when it comes to actually proving that they're organic, we start seeing that gap. We start seeing the risks in, I know people who have tried to go organic, but it has been very burdensome for them. It's been, because it's a lot of work. It's sometimes worth it, like I said, based on your market, but it's a lot of work because you have to now, and even in organic certification, there's what they call the conversion period, where before you even get certified, you have to first make sure the land that you're doing it on is completely free of pesticides. So you have first leave it to first relax. And then the requirements of how close you can be to maybe a busy trading center, because there's always risk someone is going to throw something that does not that ruins the organic nature of your product. There are regulations on how you transport, on how you store, on how you segregate it from non-organics. So when people look at this to be certified, some will say, you know what, it's not worth it. I don't have it. Some of them will say it's worth it, especially for a small holder farmer. It's a lot of work, right? So usually the best recommendation for that is do it as maybe a cooperative. And they're able to certify a group of farmers through the cooperative because they understand smallholder farmers can't really get that certificate. It's quite expensive. So I would say on your question, it's a bit of both. It's a bit of lack of knowledge on the requirements to actually prove that you're organic, and then also the cost involved with organic certification.
Right.
Then
let me just give you a few and then you could respond to them.
Please.
Yeah, so we have Raphael. Raphael is a local chicken farmer. He asks, do I need certification for local live chicken before I export? I hope you export them when they have slaughtered them. And if so, how do I go about it? I think he's into the local chicken market. Lucia, who is into manufacturing of unique sweaters, she asks, she's asking for your contact. I think that you have shared. Beatrice Tinker, glad to see you here. This is our question. She says that oh yes, I think Beatrice's question you have answered. That's the question you're answering right now. We have a question from Kakuru Gloria. Gloria is saying she's very happy about the insights on food standards. Is it possible for farmers to pull their efforts together in order to standardize and that will support their efforts for export? I think you touched on that, but it may be nice to talk more about it, whether farmers can pull together. And this, she goes further to say this would mean that the final export breaks down the standard, the final exporter breaks down the standards and the farmers comply with it, and the pull their produce and finally export through one of the other farmers. I think talk more about how we can pull together. It may also be nice to share some stories of people who are actually doing it amongst us and how that is going. There is appreciation from Jacob Onama, Emmanuel Safari, glad to see you. Please talk about PVOC policy and it's necessary. Is it necessary? Yet some products are already certified from other countries of origin. I think I hope Barbara, you can respond to what Emmanuel is asking. I'm not very sure I know what PVOC policy is, but I think Barbara is the expert. You do. There is one more here from Robert. Robert is saying, what is the procedure of setting up a plastic recycling plant? And is there a ready market? Just talk about, especially in the spirit of certification. If I wanted to set up a plastic and recycle, go about that. Yeah, I think those are the questions I have so far. I'll capture another. You can just answer those, and then we proceed a few more.
Okay. Thanks for the questions. So yes, let's start with the pooling. I think we did capture some of that. If farmers can pool their resources, and now there's two ways farmers can do this. One, you first align yourself with an off-taker. An off-taker is a big company, maybe doing export. And sometimes these larger companies will provide the training the farmers need to the training farmers need to comply to their specific standards. So let us say you as a group, of course, in any instance, it's best for smallholder farmers to come together, whether it's as a group or it's as a cooperative. Then you look for a buyer. So you can say, let's just give the product to someone else, to a bigger company, and that company might, in some instances, help you with the requirements. If they are selling organic, let's say you want to sell organic, they help you with those standards. So you yourself won't have to be certified. It will be up to the person selling the product, if that makes sense, to ensure that you are certified. What I have seen some who do it as a cooperative is absolutely you can do it if you pull together as a cooperative. So when you're cooperative, the cooperative applies for certification. And if you have, say, 500 farmers, 200 farmers, 100 farmers, the body is going to certify the cooperative with the idea that it has its farmers. So it works a bit different in that the standard allows for monitoring. How do I explain without confusing people? Monitoring the cooperative's monitoring of its farmers, if that makes sense. So instead of the certification body coming in and auditing everybody, they audit the cooperative and look at how it trains and how it checks on the organic practices of the farmer. So instead of the cooperative, instead of the certification body coming in and auditing 500 farmers, it says, no, we're going to look at your system and how you manage your farmers, how you check on what they've been doing, how you record it, how you fix non-conforming farmers. So that is an allowance that has been put in for most of the certifications that deal with many farmers. I hope that kind of answers that question. If not, just type it again in the box. Then the next was PIVOC. Is PIVOC necessary? In the beginning of the presentations, we talked about national certification, how every country has standards for certain products or all its products that are national to it. So even if sometimes even if something is coming in with a certificate from a different country, think of products that leave going to other countries. I might be certified here, but if I'm taking it to South Africa, they have different national standards, right? Which sometimes they accept, some countries will accept the international standard, but also have additional requirements based on their national standard. So as long as a product is entering a country, it's the responsibilities on the regulating body to decide which certification it accepts fully, which certification it accepts partially. Some might be accepted for certain products, some might not be accepted for other products, depending on what the situation is in the country. So, I mean, PIVOC is I know a lot of people who have complained because it's coming in and they're like, this is an international product. But if we have requirements in the country, it's something we just need to appreciate and maybe make the process easier for people. Plastic recycling plant. The question was, is there a market for it, a ready market? One, there's definitely a standard for a plastic recycling plant. You're going to have a lot to do with the environment standards, because even just your process of recycling might impact environment areas. But yes, there's absolutely a standard. Everything. Now, I'm not sure if they have the standard in Uganda, or sometimes if they don't have specific standards to what you're trying to do, you might go up to regional standards. So if Kenya, for example, has a standard on something which Uganda has not yet adopted, then it doesn't have to use those standards. The only problem will come when you're trying to get certified on it. So you might say, I want to be certified internationally. But we can help you look at what standards are applicable to recycling plants. Yeah, just contact us and we'll see. We'll try to break down exactly what are you recycling. Are you recycling for reuse? If you're recycling, say, bottles for reuse, then you're going to have, health and safety standards that need to be in there. You're going to have, you can't recycle for consumption by a producer. Like if you're trying to recycle, let's say, a bottle to be used for maybe drinking, of course, absolutely. Then now you're looking at the health and safety of the consumer because they're going to consume from that bottle. So it also depends on what you're recycling for, where you're going to put the recycled material or the waste from the recycled material. So yeah, there's a lot we would need to break down. We can try and help you do that.
All right, super, Barbara. Thanks a lot.
I think
we have
my
time
contact was put in there. Beatrice, my colleague, put in my contact. I think it's in there somewhere.
Yes, Beatrice, please just go ahead and repost the contact. I think we have time for just one or two more questions. We have one here from Daniel. Daniel says, which standards are needed for restaurants, especially those interested in getting contracts for providing food in new sectors of oil and gas in the country? Godfrey asks, if I intend to start a motorcycle spare parts and accessories business, is there a standard available which UNBS would guide? And I think I'll ask one final question for the people in services. I wanted you to just reiterate what I'm running a consultancy firm. I'm running a tourist agency. How should I think about standards, or should only the people who are running, making products like cosmetics and others, are those the only people who should genuinely be worried? You could possibly touch on those three and then we see how we can bring this home.
Okay. So for the food certification, supplying to, say, like you say, the oil and gas, yes, absolutely. You would most likely need to be certified. You definitely need your standards in there. And depending on the organization you're supplying to, they might accept, the UNBS certificate for food and safety. There's standards for food and safety for people in the hospitality, people in restaurants. There are standards at UNBS. Again, if you go to the UNBS web store and you type in what you do or what you produce and see if there's a standard, there's most definitely a standard, especially food, because like I said, food is one of those areas which have a very direct impact on the safety and health of the consumer. So they usually make sure they have a standard. Again, if you need more guidance on that, please contact us. Motorcycle parts, yes, I think I have seen motorcycle parts standards because they have cement, they have aluminum, steel. If they don't have maybe the product, they might have standards on the material you use to make it. So you need to look also into that. But they probably have parts. UNBS standard probably has parts for motorcycles. Like I said, UNBS has over 5,000 standards also in food, broken down by sector, whether you're in food, whether you're in hospitality, whether you're selling, whether you're in tourism. Actually, they have tourism. I think I've seen tourism certificates, standards in there based on the part of tourism that you're doing. So it's not going to be a standard on tourism. It's maybe going to be a standard on travel agency services or tour guide services. It goes down to certain specific levels. So yes, now this rolls back into service industry. Absolutely, service industry has certificate schemes that will benefit your business, not only food. The reason why a lot of people focus on food is because, like I said, there's greater impact for chaos if someone consumes food that is maybe not safe or is toxic. But as a service provider, the most common certification that I have seen internationally is the ISO 9001. And UNB also offers that as a certificate. They can certify you on that. You don't have to go to ISO, depending on what recognition you want. You can start with getting the ISO 9001 certified by UNBS for your service. So the quality, the 9001 is basically a quality management system. So it looks at, a lot on how you manage your operations, how you communicate your services to your user, how you gain feedback. It's more of a system certification as opposed to a product certification. So yes, people in services, whether it's logistics, whether it is in transport or consultancy, again, look at your industry first. And then if there's no specifics, my default would be 9001 ISO for people in the service industry.
Super. Thanks a lot. Great. We have just a few minutes left. I guess there are a couple of other questions coming through, but we will try to quickly bring this to a close. I think, Barbara, it will also be nice to, you kept telling us we can come to you. I know you are from the Uganda National Chamber of Small and Medium Enterprises. You could tell us a bit about how the SMEs here can join, how they can participate, some of the services which you offer, and how we can take this conversation forward as you make your final remarks.
Okay, I will give a little brief, and then maybe I will ask my colleague Beatrice to join in. But the chamber, yes, is specifically for small and medium enterprises, and we are on a membership base, of course. And so when you sign up as a member, there are certain automatic privileges you will get, and those are especially in helping you identify these issues. So we have a series of trainings, we have special programs for the women. We have a Women in Business project that is taking off soon, that focuses on helping women reach their potential in business. But I would like to think that when you join as a member, the first thing we're going to do is help you understand your business situation. So we work together and say, okay, where you're now, what is our journey to where we need to get. We believe that it's mainly a journey. So if you sign up, we have to develop a plan with you. Otherwise, we want to be relevant to your business. So these questions that you're asking, what certification I need, it's not something anyone would ask off the bat. It's something we need to sit and balance, like I said, between your business strategy. Where do you want to be? And what elements are relevant to that, or what are the most immediate things that you need? So if you need help doing the market research, we offer that as a service. If you need help in any business development services, we're able to connect people to financial institutions. We're trying to help find for the financing. I know this has been a big issue, is financing, because we can help you do all this, but if there's no money, there's no money. So we look at it in a 360-degree kind of fashion. This is your journey. Now let's find resources on how to close these gaps. It's not let's just find resources. It's what do you want to do? And how do we plan it with first the limited resources you have? And do we need to get extra funding? Don't just get funding to get funding. Get it to know exactly where it's going to go. And when you have a plan, you're able to do that. But I'd like to ask Beatrice if she's still on. Beatrice, are you on? If you can unmute. Ronald, can you unmute Beatrice?
Beatrice, I'm trying to unmute you. I'm asking you to unmute. You can unmute. Beatrice, are you there?
I think maybe she left. But
Right.
at least you have the contact, and just shoot us an email and we can send you a profile of what we do and some additional information. Were there any other questions?
Yeah, I think that's about it. You can just possibly give us some final remarks, and then we will take this forward.
Okay, I just have I think if there's any takeaway from this, it's start your journey. I mean, we're all going to always have limited resources. Even large companies have limited resources, but you have to have a journey map. You need to know where you're trying to go and plan accordingly. So yes, certification may be important, but it may not be what you need right now. What you may just need is being able to conform to best practice in your industry. So that if, say, for example, you get, just some random opportunity, you're talking to someone and get an opportunity like this, and they say they need certification, you can have the conversation of, oh, I am not yet certified, but, there's that but. I have aligned myself to best practice, and this is something that I can do within X time frame. And you know it. So when you talk with confidence about your system, about where you are and where you're trying to go, it is easy for someone to buy in. It's easy for an investor to come in and say, man, you really have a plan. You know what you want to do. Let me come in. Sometimes we just say we want investors, but we also don't know how we want them to fit in. We're not giving them a plan of where we want to be, what we want to achieve. And it diminishes our negotiating power because now they're going to tell you where you want to be, and which is never a good thing. So in this particular case of certification or with anything else, please for certification, get the standard of your industry, especially the mandatory standard. If there's no mandatory standard, get a standard that you think applies. Maybe it's the most common spoken about in your industry, and put it there on the side. And every day when you're doing your strategic planning, look at the different things, plan your journey slowly. Some might cover that journey in 2 months, some might cover it over a period of 3 months, but it will be always continuously improving your systems, be more efficient. So yes, start your journey. Use what you have now, instead of, putting everything aside. So that's it.
Great, super. Thanks a lot, Barbara, for that elaborate submission. Clearly from your final remarks, it is a journey. It isn't, none of us fully gets there, but the process of continuous improvement. We want to thank you and the team at the chamber for SMEs. I've seen Beatrice, who we are acquaintances with in a separate life. Beatrice is an Enterprise Uganda alumni, so we're very excited about the work which you're doing, Beatrice. But we really want this journey to continue. Please reach out to Barbara. She has shared her contact in the chat room. Reach out to her, join the chamber so that we can be able to build our SMEs and make them stronger. Once again, a big thank you to all who have joined in. We'll be back next week at on Thursday, still with another engaging conversation. Please keep talking, keep sharing, and let's keep building our businesses. Once again, thank you so much and have a lovely week.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.